The void was not empty. It was merely silent. Across the velvet black, a single, flickering beacon of distress pulsed, a tiny, fractured plea against the cosmic indifference. It wasn't a standard signal. No digital code, no language. It was a raw emotional chord, a soundless scream of loss and isolation. For 3 rotations, the automated patrol buoy had been broadcasting this psychic resonance, a despair so vast it made the very starlight seem fragile. Only one species in the quadrant had the strange, inconvenient sensitivity to pick it up, to feel the cold, heavy weight of its cosmic sorrow: humanity. The crew of the research vessel, the Quiet Accord, was about to answer a call that required not an engine boost or a weapon, but simply a heart. Elara Vance, navigator and designated empath for the Quiet Accord, traced the erratic curve of the signal on her console. Her quarters, nestled deep within the ship's stabilizing core, were designed to be a sanctuary. Yet even here, the foreign sorrow was a dull, persistent ache behind her sternum. "Still humming, Elara?" Captain Ren Akari's voice was a low, steady rumble over the comms, a voice built for reassurance in a crisis. "It's not a hum, Captain," Elara murmured, adjusting a shimmering, holographic map of the fringe sector known as the Veiled Nebulae. "It's a resonance, a deep, cold loneliness. Whatever sent this, it's not threatening us, it's dissolving." The Quiet Accord wasn't a dreadnought. She was a repurposed diplomatic cruiser, her hull polished to a soft, inviting silver, equipped with advanced xenolinguistics labs, not plasma cannons. Her mission was simple, profound, and profoundly human: to initiate contact based on mutual understanding, not fear. Elara was the most crucial instrument on board. Since the Great Solarian Awakening 3 centuries ago, it was understood that humanity, after centuries of inward turmoil, had developed a unique, species-wide emotional resonance. They didn't read minds, but they felt intentions. They sensed the shadow of fear, the warmth of trust, the sharp sting of malice, and the crushing despair of that cosmic plea. Analysis shows the signal source is gravitationally locked to a dead moon in the Sumerian cluster, Ren continued, his voice softer now. That cluster has been off limits since the Xenon War. Remember the old protocols? Absolute quarantine for any species designated hostile, uncontactable. The old protocols, Elara sighed, the words tasting dusty and cold. "Captain, this isn't a threat. It's an echo." She looked out her viewport at the endless, deep blue black. "I think we found the one thing the Xenon War couldn't destroy." Ren materialized a hollow projection of himself, a man whose face held the warm, weathered look of an old astronomer. "Elara, if we break quarantine, we risk everything. The other great powers, the Krill, the Syndic, they'll see this as a provocation, a sign that the Accord is nothing but a shield for a new invasion. But if we don't respond," Elara pressed, leaning into the light of a star map, then everything we built, this accord, this slow-paced, deliberate peace, is just a paper treaty. Captain, what if we're the only ones who can hear it? What if this is the test of whether we are still just humans, or whether we finally become Solarians? Ren was silent for a long moment, the starlight reflecting in his steady eyes. He knew the legacy. Humanity had been feared for its ingenuity and aggression. Now they were respected and sometimes resented for their profound, inconvenient empathy. It was a terrifying power to wield in a galaxy of guarded borders. Set a course for the Sumerian cluster, Elara, he finally said, a faint smile touching his lips. Initiate the empathy imperative. Silent running, maximum shields. We go in, we listen, and we offer a bridge, not a weapon. The bridge of the quiet accord was a place of soft lights and muted sounds. As the ship gently turned its nose toward the forbidden cluster, Elara closed her eyes. The emotional ache intensified, but now a subtle countercurrent began to flow from the human crew. A warm, collective hum of focus, of gentle determination, and of pure, open-ended care. It was the true Solarian defense, the power of shared feeling. They were a single, purposeful heart, moving softly through the deep dark, driven by a soundless, desperate plea. The journey through the veiled nebulae was a study in slow, deliberate grace. Every jump was calculated to minimize energy signatures. Every maneuver a quiet slide through the light years. When they finally reached the Sumerian cluster, the atmosphere was oppressive. The stars here seemed dimmer, choked by vast clouds of cosmic dust, and the central planetary body was a gas giant of perpetual swirling shadow, a vast, silent crypt. The source of the signal was a dead, airless moon orbiting this giant, nicknamed Threnody, a song of mourning. As the quiet accord eased into a low, quiet orbit, Elara's empathy spiked. The crushing loneliness was now overlaid with a new sensation, an overwhelming, static guilt. Captain, Elara whispered, clutching the armrest of her navigation chair. It's a structure, artificial, buried beneath the surface, and the guilt, it's so heavy. It feels ancient, like a mistake that has lasted for epochs. On screen, Ren ordered. The surface thermal scans revealed a massive, kilometer-wide structure, perfectly geometric, half buried in the dust. It was clearly alien, yet its design was strangely organic, lines flowing like frozen rivers. It looked less like a bunker and more like a tomb. Prep the shuttle of first contact, Ren said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Minimal crew, Elara, you're with me. Bring the sympathetic resonator. The Chamber of Echoes. The landing was seamless, a feather touch and the desolate gray dust. The airlock to the structure was not sealed, it had simply failed, its crystalline substance fractured by time. The deeper they moved inside the structure, the more profound the silence became, broken only by the soft thrum of their life support. The walls were not metallic, but rather compressed luminous obsidian, that seemed to absorb the light. Every few meters, they passed enormous, empty alcoves, each sized for a creature far larger than a human. Then they found the core chamber. It was vast and cathedral-like, centered around a pulsating, crystalline spire that reached to the forgotten ceiling. At the base of the spire, curled into a fetal position, was the source of the plea. It was an organism unlike anything in the galactic registry. Tall and slender, its skin was a smooth, deep violet, and its limbs were impossibly graceful. But its face, dominated by a single large, tear-filled eye, was a mask of utter devastation. It was weeping soundlessly, its psychic distress signal the only thing keeping it alive. "It's an Aethelian," breathed Dr. Jian Li, the world-known xenolinguist, reviewing the data on his wrist pad. "An extinct race, believed to have perished in the great stellar collapse 5 millennia ago. We're in a stasis vault." "It's not extinct, Doctor," Elara said, her voice shaking with the effort to control the incoming emotional tide. "It's the last one, and it's dying of grief." As they approached, the Aethelian flinched, not in aggression, but in a fresh wave of paralyzing shame. The sympathetic resonator, a device designed to translate and project human emotional currents, glowed a soft, pulsing azure. "It knows we're here." Elara choked out. "The guilt, it's not its own. It's the guilt of its entire species. They were the creators of the stellar collapse, weren't they? A failed experiment, a weapon that destroyed them, and this creature was put here to remember it all." Jian's display confirmed it. The spire was not a power source, but a vast organic memory archive, designed to hold the knowledge and sorrow of the Aethelian race. The creature was bonded to it, a living, sentient witness to 5,000 years of galactic decay and silent self-recrimination. It was carrying the sorrow of an entire, vanished civilization. Ren knelt down, moving with the unhurried grace of a man who understood the profound weight of the moment. "Elara, project our intention. Not pity, not fear, acknowledgement." Elara took a deep, shuddering breath, centering herself. She focused on the deep, enduring truth that all humans knew. Mistakes happen. Forgiveness is the first step of survival. She didn't push, she simply offered. The sympathetic resonator began to hum, a deep, resonant tone. Elara poured her focused emotion into it. "We see your sorrow. We feel the weight of your loss. It is not yours to carry alone. 5,000 years is long enough." The Aethelian recoiled further, its single eye focusing on Elara, broadcasting a sharp, painful query. "Why? Why do you care? You were not involved. You should not mourn." This was the ethical choice, the true test of the Accord. They could leave, report the find, and let the Galactic Council debate the fate of a potentially dangerous, guilt-ridden survivor. Or they could do what humans, at their best, always did: share the burden. Elara closed her eyes and extended her true feeling, not just her own, but drawing on the collective comforting presence of her crew, the quiet strength of Ren,
and the scholarly curiosity of Jian. She projected the human experience, the cycle of rise and fall, the wars, the near extinction, and the eventual slow, painful climb back to empathy and unity. We know failure. We know the shame of destruction. We are defined not by our collapses, but by our recovery. We offer the first law of Solarian physics. Emotional energy cannot be destroyed, only transformed. The Aethelian's psychic distress momentarily broke, replaced by a searing, ancient confusion. The creature lifted a delicate three-fingered hand, and Elara, without a thought, stretched out her own gloved hand, resting it gently on the massive memory spire. The contact was agonizing, but profound. 5,000 years of concentrated grief slammed into Elara's consciousness, a wave of cosmic malaise. But woven within that pain was something else, a fierce, beautiful love for its vanished people, a devotion that had kept this creature alive as a living monument. Ren and Jian immediately placed their hands on Elara's shoulder and the spire, respectively. The collective human current flowed, a steady river of warmth and acceptance, pushing back against the torrent of guilt. It was the full, concentrated force of humanity's hard-won compassion, an irresistible, non-violent pressure. The moment their hands connected, the crystalline spire reacted. It wasn't a violent surge. It was a slow, resonant singing. The energy of the Aethelians, 5,000 years of sequestered guilt, began to flow out, not into the humans, but through them, transformed by their acceptance. The air in the chamber grew heavy, humid with ancient released sorrow. Then the immense weight of the guilt, which had made the chamber feel like a pressure cooker, began to lift. The Aethelian's single, vast eye looked past Elara, past the crew, and up to the light-absorbing ceiling. For the first time, its body relaxed from the posture of perpetual sorrow. Elara knew what to do. This creature didn't need a ship, or an embassy, or a treaty. It needed a final act of remembrance that was not an accusation. "Captain, we need to broadcast a message," Elara said, her voice strained but utterly determined. "Not to the Galactic Council, to the stars." Ren didn't question it. "Jian, reroute the sympathetic resonator through the Accord's main antenna array. Elara, you have the microphone. Send the message." Elara placed her hands back on the spire, her connection to the Aethelian complete. She took the core of the ancient love she had felt, the love for a vanished civilization, and blended it with the simple, profound human truth of final peace. She projected a single, complex emotional chord. Grief is over. Love endures. Rest now. The sympathetic resonator, now amplified by the quiet Accord's massive power core, broadcast the emotional signal. It was a single, vast, resonating sigh of forgiveness and release, a wave of poetic finality that swept out from the Cimmerian cluster. The Aethelian looked at Elara, its face suddenly clear, unclouded by sorrow. It lifted its hand again, and this time it was a gesture of profound gratitude. Then its beautiful violet body began to dissolve, not into dust, but into pure light, which flowed up the spire and diffused into the silent air, finally freeing the creature from its long, terrible watch. The spire, the archive of 5 millennia of grief, ceased its pulsating. The silence that followed was not empty, it was a profound, restful peace.
The quiet accord slipped silently out of the Solarian cluster. The journey back was different. The void no longer felt indifferent. It felt receptive. The impact of the Solarian empathy signal was immediate and unexpected. Across the quadrant, every sensitive species, including the guarded krill and the analytical syndic, felt the massive wave of emotional release. They didn't understand the cause, but they understood the feeling. A vast, ancient burden had been lifted from the galactic consciousness. A full week later, while Elara and Ren were debriefing, a communication came through from the syndic, a cold, calculating race known for their absolute adherence to logic and their disdain for emotional beings like humans. The syndic representative, a being of pure light known as the luminary, appeared on the screen, its voice a sterile, musical chord. "Humans of the quiet accord," the luminary stated. "The data collected from the Solarian cluster is incomplete. We have recorded a massive, non-harmful emotional discharge. Logically, this defies all physics. Yet, subjectively, our own biological processors report a distinct, long-absent calm." Ren waited, saying nothing. "Your empathy imperative," the luminary continued, the musical chord of its voice fluctuating in a way that the xenolinguist later classified as puzzled respect. "It is not a weapon, nor a shield. It is a balm. You took on an impossible guilt not to conquer, but to heal." The luminary paused, a pause that spanned centuries of interspecies suspicion. "The syndic will not report your breach of quarantine. Instead, we are initiating a new protocol, the Whisper Protocol. Any non-hostile, emotional distress signal received by any of our outposts must now be immediately relayed to a Solarian vessel. It appears," the luminary concluded, "that the galaxy needs you less for your engines, but more for your hearts." The enduring power. Elara stood by the viewport on the bridge. The true emptiness of space no longer felt so cold. The legacy of the Aethelian was gone, replaced by a new truth. Humanity's long history of sorrow and struggle had finally given them a unique, powerful cosmic role. They were the resonators, the ones who could not only feel the darkness, but transform it into light. She felt the crew's presence behind her. Ren's quiet pride, Jian's warm curiosity, the faint, comforting thrum of their collective faith in the mission. They hadn't won a war. They had simply cared more fiercely than anyone thought possible. They had offered the final, most heroic act of all, radical, unqualified acceptance. She smiled, a deep, tired, and profoundly hopeful smile. They had been drawn to a signal of desperation, but they had returned with a signal of unbreakable unity.
The stars, distant and eternal, seemed to twinkle with a newfound gentleness. Humanity, once the volatile child of the galaxy, had finally found its true strength, not in the roar of its star drives, but in the quiet whispers between stars. And so let the gentle hum of that distant accord lull you to rest, knowing that even in the vast, silent void, the most powerful force is the simple, enduring warmth of the human